Now, when you take a look at silver, the last two trading sessions particularly, including today, has been a pretty big move. We're seeing silver up about 2% today. It was up over 2% yesterday. And you can see these big green bars were over that 24, which is a nice number to be over. But in the grand scheme of things, we are still seeing a series of lower highs and more or less lower lows in silver. So it's not in a new uptrend just yet. When we zoom out to the big picture of silver, we can see here silver's trading in this large bull flag pattern. It just came down to long-term support around this 22 level and quickly reversed back up. So maybe we've put in a bottom. There are a couple of other leading indicators. When we take a look at, for example, like silver miners, silver miners are starting to come back to life. Now, they haven't made higher highs just yet, but when we take a look at gold miners, which I like to look at gold miners as the kind of the true leading indicator, they have broken a previous high that we saw last month. And so gold miners are really starting to break and run to the upside. They're above this blue line, which is the 50-day moving average, which is a pretty critical level. Typically, once you get above it, you can start a new uptrend. And so we are above that level, and gold miners are usually the first to run. And then we kind of see gold and silver miners and silver, physical silvers, sometimes the last one to actually really break out and confirm a new uptrend. So it's kind of a nice leading indicator, especially if you like silver, because you can kind of get involved in it before it really fully turns around because of these, looking at these leveraged plays on precious metals. Well, typically people are always trying to find out where they can get the most leverage, the best bang for their buck. And so if they think silver is going to go higher, then they want to own things that mine silver. And so they'll move into these equities, and equities will trade 3-5 times the movement percentage-wise as silver. So if silver moves 1%, we can see miners moving 3 or 5% to the upside, sometimes a whole lot more than that. So that's why people go into these leveraged plays. So when people are bullish on, say, silver, they're going to move into silver miners. And today, silver's up 1.8%, and you look at the silver miners, they're up 3.4% as a whole. So they're up 2 times more or less what silver is. And so people move into those leverage plays and get positioned, and then they can sit back and be like, okay, I'm going to pick up some physical if they want to add a different angle to it, or for the long-term portfolios. But the equities move first because they want to get their money in really quick before they take off, and then they can settle back into the physical. Ideally, we want to see 2 previous highs broken. So if we were to look at this chart, and silver is pretty volatile, so it requires a couple big moves. More or less, we could argue that this is a high. We had this sell-off and this reaction high as it made new lows after that. And then we've got this second high. So typically we want to see 2 previous highs get broken. So the market has run up, hit this resistance level, pulled back, and then busted through it. And so now we're coming up to this next level here, which is around the $25, which is, it's a pretty solid number. Typically people at $5 increments and $10 increments for metals, they act as resistance when you're below them. They act as support when you're above them. So we are coming up to that resistance level. So if we can break through 25, the first pause or pullback after that can be bought. That'll be a shift in momentum. If something breaks through two resistance levels, that means it's got some upward momentum. And by doing that, it's most likely starting to make some lower or some higher lows as well. So that's kind of what we're looking for. A break of 25, the first pause or pullback can be bought, and it should have quite a bit of momentum to go back up to this, probably the 28 level, which is where the next major resistance level is going to be. So there's still some work to do in silver. It's in a downtrend, but long term, I mean, the charts look great, and this is like the very early sign that it might be turning around, but it is still trying to pick a bottom at this point if you're a short-term, speculative player. Yeah, from a technical standpoint, it's in a downtrend still. It's coming up to resistance. It's actually more likely to sell off and go lower than it is to go higher right now. We have some of the leading indicators like the miners starting to outperform. So you start to get these mixed signals. The odds of it reversing lower diminish because there's other things telling us, hey, the bottom looks like it's in. So you really just have to weigh all these things out. Really, I wouldn't do really a whole lot with silver right now. I wouldn't be looking to short it. I'm excited that it might be starting an uptrend, but I just wouldn't fully jump in right now in terms of a trade. I'd rather see the new uptrend start. First pause or pullback, you can jump on the wagon and try and catch it a run up from there. That's the way I see it. I don't jump into things when it has mixed signals. Yeah, gold chart's very similar to silver. I mean, it's still making a series of lower highs over the last several months, lower lows, and it's flirting with the 50-day moving average. It's under the 200-day moving average. So, I mean, it's still in a bearish phase. The long-term chart is a major bull flag pointing to $2,500, $2,600 over the next year or two. But a short-term standpoint, it's really trading sideways. It's in like in a kind of accumulation stage where investors and traders are kind of just swapping contracts. Everyone's trying to get repositioned, people giving up on it, new people moving in. When that process is done, which I feel as though we are getting right to that turning point as we go into the end of the year here, then we're going to go higher. But again, it's stuck in that sideways to bearish trend right now. And I think it's just a waiting game. Wait for this momentum to shift, show us some higher highs, show us some higher lows, and that's the definition of a new uptrend. And then from there on, hopefully we'll see it take off. We're definitely seeing the US dollar trade near a resistance area. When we look at the UUP, which is an ETF that tries to mimic the US dollar index, we've got a pretty major resistance level right through this consolidation where price kind of traded under it and then kind of traded above it and then traded through it. So there's going to be a lot of resistance through there. And that's pretty much where the US dollar index has come up to. It is pulling back, but it's got the opposite trend of precious metals, right? It's got a series of higher lows, a series of higher highs. It is flirting with resistance. And the odds are it's actually going to find some support and potentially go up and push higher. So, that's going to keep pressure on the precious metals. And so we're at this turning point where it looks like precious metals are at a long-term support zone trying to find a bottom. The dollar is at a long-term resistance area, and it might run into resistance here. But overall, we just have that mixed signal because on a short-term basis, precious metals are starting to show signs of leadership, early leadership. They're at support, and they've had a very strong bounce. So we just need to see. I think it's going to take a few weeks to see what's going to happen. Are metals going to pop and run higher and then have a bit of a pause or pullback and kickstart that new trend? Or are they going to actually reverse here in the next week and start to sell back down? And we really just have to let the market do what it's going to do. And it's going to dictate if there's a trend reversal or not. And we just need to wait for that to unfold. Silver can really kind of just pop and take off in a huge way. And it becomes kind of a crowded trade, a Main Street trade. It attracts a lot of people who want to get into a speculative, really interesting, how to make a lot of money fast. And it's always had that. And that's why it creates these big movements. So when silver starts to move, which is why I'm a big fan of silver, I'm more heavyweight silver than anything else. When they start to move, silver could pop to that $45, $80 level.